Welcome to CG Tutorial. Section 1. Setting the stage. We often hear the distinction between the left and the right. The political spectrum is often visualized as a line, with the left favoring greater government intervention and the right advocating for free markets. This simplistic view, however, belies the complexity of economic policies in developing nations, where the stakes are high and the choices difficult. Left-leaning policies tend to emphasize social welfare, wealth redistribution, and government ownership of key industries. They aim to uplift the impoverished and create a more egalitarian society. Right-wing policies, conversely, champion free markets, privatization, and lower taxes. They believe that reducing government involvement unleashes the power of individual initiative and drives economic growth. In the context of developing nations, these contrasting ideologies clash in a complex interplay of social, political, and economic forces. The challenge for these nations lies in finding the delicate balance between promoting economic growth and ensuring social equity. This essay examines the key economic policies of the left and right, focusing on taxation, ownership, and social welfare. We will explore how these policies impact economic growth, efficiency, and income inequality in developing nations. Through this analysis, we aim to shed light on the complexities of economic policy choices in these rapidly evolving economies.
Section 2. Taxation, the money tree. Taxation, the lifeblood of any government, is a point of contention between the left and right. Left-leaning policies favour progressive taxation, where the wealthy shoulder a greater share of the tax burden. This approach aims to fund social welfare programs and forcibly redistribute wealth to reduce income inequality without directly tackling skill inequality. However, high taxes on the wealthy often discourage investment and entrepreneurship. That is, the desire or the keenness to start or run own businesses as opposed to looking for jobs. This potentially hinders economic growth. Mr. Yiji Chao of the University of Essex has argued in an essay in Essex Student Journal that the tax rate should be reasonable and the focus should be on implementing a reasonable tax policy that addresses income inequalities without infringing upon individuals' rights to the fruits of their labour. Right-leaning policies, on the other hand, advocate for lower taxes across the board. They argue that lower taxes encourage investment, job creation, and economic growth as they leave more money with the investors and companies. The benefits of this growth, they believe, will eventually reach all segments of the society. Of course, the critics love to point out that this approach can exacerbate income inequality. These critics don't mind the skill inequality. It may seem to an uninformed bystander. However, the critics would disagree. Developing nations face a huge challenge in this arena. They need to generate sufficient revenue to fund essential services and infrastructure, while simultaneously fostering a climate conducive to investment and economic growth. Finding the right balance is crucial for their long-term prosperity.
Section 3. To own or not to own. That is the question. The debate over state versus private ownership of industries is another key point of divergence between the left and right. Left-leaning policies often prefer state ownership of critical sectors like utilities, transportation, and healthcare. They argue that this ensures affordability and accessibility for all citizens, particularly the poor and marginalized. However, state-owned enterprises can be inefficient and prone to corruption, hindering economic dynamism. Right-leaning policies champion privatization, arguing that private companies are more efficient and innovative, leading to better services and lower prices. This approach, they believe, attracts foreign investment and stimulates economic growth. The left-leaning leaders, however, always warn people that privatization will lead to monopolies and price gouging, hurting consumers. But these same leaders conveniently fail to mention that each of these problems gets significantly worse if the government runs these companies, especially in essential sectors, and forces out competition from the private sector. In developing economies, more competition is needed. Ask yourselves, is it the job of a democratic government to run businesses and compete with private companies? Has it been designed to optimally function in that manner? Developing nations grapple with this dilemma as they strive to modernize their economies and attract foreign investment. The choice between state and private ownership often hinges on the specific industry, the level of government capacity, and the social and political context.
Section 4. The welfare tightrope. Social welfare programs designed to provide a safety net for those who they feel is worthy of their welfare are another area of contention. Left-leaning policies advocate for robust methods for giving free money to those who don't work and free healthcare. Also, these aren't exactly free. It's going to be paid by you, the hard-working taxpayers. They believe this promotes social equity. No, not equality, but equity. However, right-wing people argue that welfare programs are like rewarding Peter, the jobless, with the money received as taxes from hard-working Paul. You can be Paul in this scenario. Right-leaning economists also agree that it will surely create inflation, disincentivize work and bring about economic ruin by straining government budgets in developing nations. They believe it's like your father giving a few hungry neighbors a few of the fish you assiduously caught, because that is easier than instilling in them the desire to learn how to fish, although doing the latter will help contribute to a better society. Also, is it fundamentally fair to you, the taxpayer? Right-leaning policies prefer a more limited role for government in social welfare due to legitimate fears of corruption, opacity in method, preferentialism and so on. They believe that reliance on individual initiative, family support and private charity is more effective in addressing poverty. They believe in redistribution of skills and knowledge as opposed to doling out free money. They argue that government intervention should be minimal, focusing on creating an environment conducive to economic growth, which they believe will ultimately benefit everyone. Developing nations face the difficult task of balancing the need for social welfare with the imperative for economic growth. The extent and nature of social safety nets often depend on the level of economic development, the prevalence of poverty, and the government's capacity to manage such programs effectively.
Section 5. The Balancing Act. The economic policies of the left and right offer contrasting approaches to development. Left-leaning policies prioritize social welfare and equity, while right-leaning policies emphasize free markets and individual initiative. It would be disingenuous not to mention that the likes of Elon Musk, Thomas Sowell, and Jordan Peterson have hinted at why equity is a terribly bad, if not a dangerous idea. Some surely understand why inequality in talent is inevitable, so wealth distribution should be commensurate with it. Left and right-leaning policies both have merits and drawbacks. The critics disagree with this too. Think about what was just said. Anyways, the optimal path for developing nations often lies somewhere around the center. Successful development requires a pragmatic approach that adapts to the specific circumstances of each nation. This involves carefully considering the trade-offs between different policy options, taking into account the level of economic development, the capacity of government institutions, and the social and political context.
Ultimately, the goal is to create an environment that allows individuals and businesses to thrive. The rate at which a person or a company thrives will not be equal to that of others. So, we should ensure that the benefits of economic growth are shared fairly among all citizens. But who decides what fair means? The answer is you, the viewers. Let's keep this discussion going in the comments. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.